Well, to talk a bit more about this, let's bring in Dave Keating in Brussels. Dave, first of all, give us some of your reaction on what some of these heads of political parties had to say, quite critically in many cases, to and about the French president.
Yeah, it was interesting to watch, especially from here in Brussels. I mean, people here in Brussels were obviously watching this speech very, very closely. But I think that people in the European Commission and European Council buildings behind me will have been disappointed in the lack of any detail about the actual legislative agenda of the French presidency. The thing that the French presidency actually does, Macron had almost nothing to say about that. And that is actually usually what a leader of the presidency outlines when they give this speech to the European Parliament. Macron was really focused on the big issues here, and that is what the leaders of the groups also responded with. So it was interesting to me that Macron started with criticism of rule of law violations in Eastern Europe, saying that these countries who recently joined the EU are not willing to subscribe to EU values. And it was also interesting to me that he mentioned Brexit. Brexit these days is a topic that EU leaders tend to want to avoid because it's seen as a big headache. So it was interesting that he mentioned it and that he specifically said that the EU is having problems with the government of the UK, but that the EU has no problem with the British people. Now, he's saying that at exactly the same time that British Prime Minister Boris Johnson is fighting for his political life, and there's a lot of speculation about whether a new government could unlock the impasse there. And it was interesting that in the response from the European Commission, from Vice President Maros Šefčovič, who was speaking on behalf of Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, who couldn't be there because she's had a COVID exposure, he said roughly the same thing. He used the same words that this government in the UK, the EU is having a problem with. So that was quite interesting. In terms of the responses, Macron, of course, avoided talking about the upcoming French presidential election, the elephant in the room. It was super interesting that the first person to bring that up was not a French MEP, but a German MEP, Manfred Weber, the leader of the center-right European People's Party, who endorsed Macron's opponent in the presidential election. In his response, Valérie Pécresse, saying that she would be better to lead the French people, and he hopes that French voters choose her instead of Macron. Macron, of course, is not even yet a declared candidate in that election. But Weber's comments there were greeted with some booing from inside the chamber. I'm told not just from Macron's allies, but from other people who just thought it was inappropriate for Weber to bring that into the discussion. But of course, he set the tone for the whole debate. It was thought that really would only be the French MEPs bringing up the election. But now, as we can see, as the debate is unfolding as we speak, the French presidential election is very much playing a role.
Absolutely. That is clear as a bell, Dave. Just to give some context to our perhaps non-EU or maybe EU viewers as well, just explain to us what exactly the rotating presidency is supposed to do and how much power it really has.
It doesn't have very much power. It's often called the EU presidency. It is not a presidency of the EU. It's the presidency of the Council of the EU, which is the upper chamber in the EU's legislature. It sits in the building just behind me here. It's made up of the ministers of each of the 27 national governments who vote to approve legislation, but they cannot initiate legislation. They don't propose anything. All the presidency can do is set the agenda and chair meetings for proposals that have come from the European Commission, the building here to my left. That is the EU executive. That's the one that's the real presidency of the EU. They propose legislation. So much of what Macron was speaking about here in this speech were big headline issues that are really the prerogative of either the European Commission or the European Council, which very confusingly is a different body than the Council of the EU. The European Council is what European citizens know most. It's the summits of prime ministers and presidents that happen here in Brussels every 4 times a year, where they discuss the big picture issues. That body has its own president, Charles Michel, a person. The French presidency is not actually heading up those European Council meetings.
Dave, thanks so much for that. Dave Keating there.